Welcome to Real Talk with Tina and Ann. I am Ann, and today we have Shawn Manvell on. She is the founder of Achievement Center for Therapy in California and Las Vegas, from what I understand. I really personally, this meant a lot to me for you to even reach out and want to be on because with having three kids with disabilities and autism and it really hit home for me what exactly you guys do. But I would love for you to tell our listeners what exactly the Achievement Center for Therapy is.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having me on. This is a real pleasure and honor to be on here. So thank you. Um, Achievement Center for Therapy is a pediatric feeding therapy center, and it started as one in Camarillo, California, and that's in Ventura County. That's my headquarters. And then
Okay.
added on Las Vegas, Nevada. And the reason why is who I serve are military families predominantly. And from doing my work, I kept getting recruited, if you will, from a doctor on Nellis Air Force Base to keep coming
Oh,
out to assist with some questions that they had about pediatric feeding, which is my specialty. So
okay.
I kept going out to Nellis to the Air Force Base, and then they said, "Well, why don't you just start a practice here? You're here an awful lot." And I thought, you know what? That's not a bad idea. So I
Could you
opened.
talk more about what the feeding therapy is? Because I'm not even aware of what that is.
Sure, yeah. So pediatric feeding therapy is actually what looks like for a lot of people, including sadly our pediatricians. A lot of times I go and I was teaching them the differences because there's kind of a fine line between the two. So a lot of times they get dismissed as they're a picky eater, but it's not necessarily picky eating when it crosses a certain threshold. So my job
Okay.
and mission was that I would teach doctors, um, school psychologists, nurses, everyone what that difference really is and what it looks like.
All right. So that's how you got started.
I got
But
started, and then I added one last location just recently in the last 3 years, which is in San Diego, again, catering to my military
okay.
families.
But you do a lot more than that. I
I
mean, from what I understand, there's speech therapy and occupational therapy and ABA, advanced intensive therapy,
That's
and
right.
independent education evaluation. I mean, you have a list of things that you do. So somehow along the line, you just kind of kept expanding.
I did, right? So, as a speech language pathologist myself, and I was an expert witness for doing helping families with IEEs, which is the IEP. If you don't agree with it, then
Okay.
you would go get that next level. So, I do that as well. And then I'm also
Oh,
the pediatric feeding specialist. And I think that came from just loving giving a voice to children and people. But then I started realizing, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you don't have your health and or your nutrition, you don't have your health. And then those other things are just going to be a bigger challenge. We're going to be kind of like spinning our wheels. So I really got into pediatric feeding so that I just overall get to help the entire body and kids flourish with their development.
yeah.
Then
On your website, you do talk about helping each child reach their full developmental potential for communication and enabling them to increase their independence in everyday activities, increase interaction and participation with their families, and improve the overall quality of their lives. I just want to quickly say that, we had people come into our home when my littles were really little, and my 4-year-old was nonverbal when I adopted him. And I cannot tell you the difference it has made by having all these tools and people in our lives early in order to help them reach what I consider their full potential right now. We've worked really hard. So what you're doing is really incredible, and I really would encourage all of our listeners to, for a program like this, it is so important to get kids that are having difficulties communicate their needs and their wants. I mean, things that are just basic things. It's so important for us to understand. I mean, I've got kids, my kids, especially my one. I mean, he still, when he gets sick, it's really like, what is exactly wrong with you? And we don't know. what is exactly wrong with him. So we really have to, try to use the language and try to learn their language and try to get them to learn how to communicate with us.
Exactly. Yeah, it's there's a lot to it. And then there's that hierarchy that we as the speech pathologists see that we want to try to go make happen. And that's our specialty where we come in. But then we also have that pressure that we put on ourselves all the time for our families and our parents because we know that they have their wish list as well too. So there's always this trust and balance that needs to be established between therapist and then parent. And then also you got to have that bond with the child so that then they even trust you and then can start basically their healing process and their rehabilitation.
That's everything. I mean, trust is everything. So getting that connection, I would think that very initial connection is really important.
Yeah, the rapport building is definitely where we have to start with everybody, and it's essential to get that piece. And then it's on an individual basis. So some kids might take to a therapist a little bit easier and quicker, and then sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. Knowing that and recognizing it, and my expansion of not just having one therapy center, that's where all this teletherapy has come in and doing master
Mm,
classes and stuff like that, because our
okay,
outreach has to be bigger because what if you are remote and you only have one person in town to choose from and you tried it and it just didn't work out?
right.
So this opens up the doors so that people in remote areas and all over can actually go get exceptional care that works for them and their child.
What is the age range that you work with?
Directly one-on-one, we can work with babies right out of a NICU because we are pediatric feeding specialists. So
Okay.
that's happened multiple times that the parents need support after leaving the hospital because that's a big scary step, right? You have this whole team of people at that hospital and then you go home and it's just you and your spouse. Then we work up to about preteens, and that's because we work with a lot of children with autism, and those social skills are really creating a barrier. So we find that age range is when it's really essential to go after social skills.
What are some of the things that you might do with a child to help them get to becoming their best self?
A lot of it is a systematic approach or it's a systematic desensitization. So, a lot of times, I think the secret to what differs from us being the speech language pathologist and expert and then parents, because a lot of times parents will come in and be like, I tried that. I can't believe that's what you're doing and it's working for you. What
Yeah.
but there's a subtle little thing that's missing and not everyone catches it is that we know if you're performing here, we just got to make sure that the child is performing just below here when we ask them to do things. Because if we ask too high of a level, which is a lot of times what's happening with the parents because they're not speech language pathologists, they don't know that order, the developmental hierarchy, that sometimes you come in just slightly too high and then the child won't perform for you. So then we can identify that. We bring them down to a level where they're very comfortable and that they're functioning at successfully. And then from there, once we got that trust and the rapport, we start building on that little bit by little bit. And we just keep adding to their ability level. And there's different parts of language too, right? So there's the articulation of it, the phonology of it, semantics in your vocabulary. So we just start building it up systematically.
So how long have you been doing this in these particular centers? How many years did you say?
I've been having private practices since for 13 years.
Okay. So do you have any great success stories?
I do. I have children who I meet who are on the spectrum, I think are my most profound that stick in my mind because
Okay.
of me not speaking and not eating. And so to get to go see a child who is nonverbal on a communication device and then get to see that then now they're a verbal speaker.
Oh,
And
wow.
oh, yeah, that's a big moment for a parent, right? And then
Yeah.
also taking them and knowing that they're on the verge of with a doctor's order saying that they only have 30 days. I have 30 days, my team and I, to get a child to start gaining 1 pound. And it doesn't sound like it would be hard to do, but when you have a child that's a picky
Hmm.
eater, has a pediatric feeding disorder, that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been diagnosed correctly for a long time, that's a pretty big challenge. And especially if you have a communication
Yeah.
delay or disorder with it. You can't do your best to explain and know if they're understanding. So I would say that those are probably my best stories ever is when I get to go meet that 30-day deadline and be like, we didn't gain 1 pound, we gained two. We're on the way to recovery. We won't need your feeding tube, but thanks, doc. So that makes me excited because that's a parental right is to make your child feel healthy and safe, right? And if you feel
Right.
that now you can't do that because you have a medical professional telling you in a roundabout way that you failed here, you couldn't feed your kid. And why is that? Well, um, I don't get into the parent shaming. I just want to come and fix the problem. And I get a lot of passion and joy out of doing just that. So those are probably my top. When you get a kid off of a communication device that otherwise wasn't having a voice, and now their parent can hear them.
So I hear the passion in with you. I mean, this really means a lot to you. You
It
can
does.
tell. Well, can I just ask, how did you get into this? I mean, why did you go in this direction?
I have a younger brother. My brothers, I have an older brother and a younger brother, so I'm a middle child. And my younger brother was a delayed talker. And so with the 4 years between us, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was watching my parents like really be upset by it. So I would just try every moment I had to even pitch in to be like, okay, say it like this, or let's try to do this. So I gotta say, my career probably unofficially, but started at the age of 6 trying to get my brother to talk.
Oh
And I loved
my,
it. Yeah. And I just kept going with it. And then
I
what
love it.
happened was that after he would start talking and that got better, I would see that my parents were just struggling because he had a learning disability and they were trying to go to the schools and go through the motions of the IEPs. But you got to think this was many, many years ago, right?
Hmm.
So to see those struggles, then I was just like, you know what, this just seems like a good fit for me. I love it and I can really be impactful and make a difference. And so I got to experience it from the school level. I've worked in the school environment. Then I just knew that I love medical, but I couldn't do enough medical. And I felt like I wasn't doing enough of what I got taught to do. So I
Hmm.
left the schools, and that's how I
Okay.
formed the private practice.
That is so amazing that you started that young and you took your passion trying to help your brother when you were so little. It's a stepping stone. Everything is getting us to where we are in life. I mean, that's what I always say. And there's a reason for everything. And we
Right.
just really don't even know where we're going to end up. But I mean, that is just so amazing that you took those skills and then you fed that passion and you ended up getting a master's degree in this. And now you actually are this founder of these facilities, but you have an issue right now. You could lose it.
Right. Yeah. So I did cater to the military at all three of my practices. So I am a widow. After my husband passed away,
Oh
I
my gosh, I'm so sorry.
thank you. So it was when our daughter was 2 years old. So I really devoted myself to just make it happen so that as a single mom raising our daughter, that I could make sure I never missed a beat with her schooling, field trips, and I wanted to be that classroom mom. So I
Sure.
knew too I couldn't work for anybody and go attend all of that stuff. It'd just be impossible, right? Or I'd be unemployed. So
Yeah.
with starting my own practices, it was really, really important to me. But also the other part that why I catered to where I was and where I landed, which is in Camarillo, California, there's military bases, and I'm a military
Mm.
brat. So my dad raised my family, and we had such a nice upbringing from a military career that he had of 30 years. And so I just felt very comfortable, and it was my weird way, if you will, of serving our country because I wasn't in the military, but I got to give back because I got to serve all these families. And they have a lot of challenges because a
Hmm.
lot of times they're like a single mom or single parent too because their spouse
Sure.
is deployed, right? So I can
Sure.
really
Yeah.
kind of relate in a weird way. Like, I get it, you're on your own too. I am, I get you. And let's get through this together. But the other challenge is that the military families are usually at only one place for about 3 years. But by the time they find their therapist and get settled, sometimes they have less than 2 years or around 2 years to go get something fixed. And that's a challenge because some of these things take time. And so I set up my practices all by these military bases because I just love serving them. But that problem that you're addressing or talking about is that it's a real big one, is that our military has um, transitioned over to another healthcare management company to guide and run them as of January 1st, 2025. And as a result, I know it takes a lot to go get everything operating. I couldn't even imagine what they have on their plate to go do, but it's resulted in us medical providers not getting paid since January 1st, 2025.
Oh my gosh.
And with three locations and staff, like therapists are not minimum wage workers. On the average, they're like 60 to $75 an hour. So, and then the problem with healthcare insurance that a lot of people don't know or understand is that they could say, well, Shawn, why don't you just close your doors or lay some people off? Well, you can't. You're not allowed by your contract to go not see and treat patients because then it falls under patient abandonment.
Okay.
So we're still expected to see and treat everyone as we have been, but we're not getting paid.
So yeah, I mean, you can't operate like this, obviously.
No.
You
Right.
can't. You can't keep the doors open. You can't even keep the lights on. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, so I really don't even know. For one thing, let me go back to the insurance aspect because I really don't know that much about insurances. My kids, fortunately, if unless things change, I'm not really sure, but with adoption and their disabilities and everything that came with them also came Medicaid. So I do know that with insurances, if something changes because all of a sudden our dentist no longer took straight Medicaid or, there was a Buckeye change or whatever, and they're like, sorry, now you have to pay cash or whatever because now we no longer accept that.
Mhm.
So sometimes, I mean, fortunately for me, I can just change when it's open enrollment, I can change to another Medicaid provider. I don't know what happens in your case. I mean, what happens if the entire insurance just doesn't accept it anymore? I mean, can you end up trying to become a provider for that insurance that they do accept now?
Right. So that is what I had to learn to do. As I was very proud to go be devoted to the military, and I was almost exclusive with them. And learning,
Wow.
learning in life, life's lessons, I was so happy and content serving them, never thinking in a million years something like this could happen. I've been ranked on Tricare's website as being an exceptional provider for many years. And but it happened to all of us, right? So it's this transition process that they had to go through. And what I had to do is quickly buckle down and go get what's called a credentialing specialist to go start getting us on other insurances so that then I'm not
Oh,
Tricare dependent per se, but it's part of my passion and mission has always been to help these families because I feel like if they're overseas and they're fighting for us and they're helping our country, the last thing they need to do is to hear from their spouse or loved one that they got another fight to come back to, that their child isn't getting the health care that they need. And
mm-hmm.
and it might be
Right.
a stretch, but and I also say like in my own personal opinion, after doing this for almost 10 years with military insurance, that I feel like it could be considered a national security concern or threat. And what I mean by that is, and you can speak to it too as a parent, that if you were to lose your services that you're providing to your child, and we know that they love structure and routine, and
Sure.
I have to close my doors. And now there's three different cities that don't have services that I was providing to these families. That's all those families are going to just be kind of unraveling a little bit. The behaviors are going to come back, the trips to the ER because they do have some behaviors that then get pretty
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
rough and tough,
Mm-hmm.
hanging on a wall or a floor, or, they get themselves into harm's way because they're not regulated. They're not doing as well as they normally could or usually do. So then that military member has that on their plate, wondering how is their spouse or how are their kids doing without therapy in play now? And they're
Mm-hmm.
hearing the stories, right? Or even if they're not deployed yet, they're at home and they're having sleepless nights now because their child can't sleep. They're, it's wreaking havoc in their whole household because their child is struggling. And this is all because there's no continuity in care, because if people like me have to close our doors, and it is happening all over. You can read about it on social media all over the place. It's
Okay.
there's threads after threads of, Tricare isn't paying. And it's not, I'm not blaming anyone. It's just the process that's happened and occurred. And it's super unfortunate that it's taking such a long time. But I just got to say to my parents and to everybody out there and to other providers that I hope everybody can hang in there along with myself to keep everything going, because the saddest shame is if you can't make it in that window of time that we don't know when we're going to get paid still. If you can't stay open, then all these families suffer, but not just the families themselves. Like I said, it becomes then, in my opinion, a national security threat or concern.
Did you guys have any heads up? Did you have any?
No, no,
It,
not at all. That would have been nice, but we knew that there was because the country's divided in two. It's called Tricare East for the East Coast and Tricare West for the West Coast. However, I gotta say, Tricare West is far bigger and covers more area of our country than Tri East. And they have different management companies that run them. For the East Coast, they have a company called Humana. And then on Tri-West, we have on TRICARE West, we have Tri-West now. And so we
okay.
knew that the big date was going to happen on January 1st, that they officially take over. But we were also told,
Mm,
don't worry, in 2024, this is their blended year. So we thought, like, okay, they're working on it behind the scenes, like they're a big company. This was a $65.1 billion contract. I'm sure they've got fabulous teams ready to go. But technology is technology, and databases and people, like there's a lot of unpredictability. And when they took it over, what we're getting back from them is just that there's glitches in the computer system and there's this problem and there's that problem. And so we just got to ride it out. But we didn't know that this was going to happen. No one could have been prepared for it.
so there's no end in sight for this. Like they don't see them being able to transition and be able to pay you at any point or have back pay or anything. They don't see
Right.
that happening.
They don't know when, and when we call, it's just really frustrated staff on their end because
Okay.
some of us are getting a little heated because this is a pressing
Well,
situation. It's critical. Um,
yeah, it,
I've been in business. This is my livelihood. This is what I've done for my career, and it's under threat. So sometimes, the other providers probably can be heated too, and you don't want to take it out on the person that's trying to help you at the insurance. But what's
sure.
frustrating
Yeah,
is they don't know themselves, the person answering the phone. So they've even confessed, like, we're quitting. Like, we can't take it. So then we know that they're losing staff, they're losing providers.
yeah,
And what's going to happen? Here's the result. Already, and you might be able to speak to it too, is that there's already a shortage of all of us that can do this level of help for this population of children with special needs. And there's a broad region of like what that encompasses. There's, Down syndrome, there's autism, there's just neurotypical kids who, have a stuttering or fluency disorder. There's just a wide spectrum of it all, right? But
hmm,
what's going to happen is when more people close their doors, then the waiting list that already exists that nobody's supposed to have is just going to keep growing and growing.
hmm.
And then there's regression. That's the other shame of it. It
Oh
doesn't
my gosh, regression happens so quickly.
It
I mean,
does.
it can, like you said earlier, it can happen in a week. I mean,
Mhm.
so that's why you want to go 2 times a week. I mean, it really does happen that fast. I know with my three.
Yeah. When I worked in public schools as a speech therapist, and that's how I started my career, I got to do regression statements. And we did them literally over a holiday break to just go see if the child's
Mm,
not present for just the holiday break, how much
yeah.
regression there is. And let me tell you, we found that there was a lot. So that's why those regression statements had to be done, because they knew that it was a thing. And I just can't,
Yeah.
it's disheartening. It's really upsetting to know how much I have given in my team. I
Hmm.
employ over 35 people. They're
Oh,
fabulous. They're just amazingly talented people. We all have our own camaraderie together, and to dismantle that or put it on pause is just a crying shame. I'm hopeful that I can even find funding so that then I can keep my doors open to keep serving the military families. And
okay,
while doing that, diversifying to get on those other insurance panels as much as we can, as quickly as we can
okay.
to help them.
And until that happens, um, what do you need?
We need coverage for operation expenses, whether it's a capital investor that can help us to support us for the possible 3, maybe 6 months at tops, so that we can remain open. Because what I do know is with the credentialing specialist expert who I have, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
very blessed and grateful
Mm-hmm.
to have found her. And you said everything happens for a reason. How I found mine was sensational. She's super good at what she does. So if I can go get those other insurance panels going, then that will help supplement that we wouldn't need nearly as much to keep the operation expenses going because we'll no longer be Tricare solely dependent. And then the other thing I do is I have master classes, and I used to not do them.
Oh,
I used to not do them as nearly as frequently, but now I'm bringing them back because it is something that I enjoy doing. Because I'm very grateful for being on your show, but I'm also I don't know, look up to the fact that you have this following because it's learning how many followers it takes, to have a backing, and then seeing how long it takes to get that many followers is a big job, right? So I have like only 1,000 followers on my website, and then to see how many people listen in on your talk show, it's pretty amazing. So it's a lot of effort to get there. And so I used to public speak. I used to do a lot of other things, but owning my private practice kind of took me away from those things. And I am a therapist still, but what my passion is basically what you're doing, reaching as many people as I can by the masses and help that volume go up. And that's what's really, really a passion of mine too, because I spoke about there's a lot of people in remote areas that don't have therapy, and I want
right.
to try to do my best. So with technology and with different platforms, now I can have that opportunity to go do master classes and then just even classes on a regular basis for people who are just stuck. Just to build a community so that they know that they can trust in coming there, and we can talk about the speech and feeding strategies, or maybe about IEEs or your
Mm-hmm.
IEP that seems like you're not getting what you feel like you should be getting. And how do you manage and navigate those things, right? So I'm excited. I would really love to have a big community where I can help more families.
When can people do that? I mean, is it available now? Can they go to your website and be able to sign up for classes, or what are you offering right now?
Yep. So we're doing one master class at a time so that I can give it my all. So what I do,
Okay.
I'm going back to a platform I used to do. So it's 4 weeks of doing one topic. So the first 4 week master class is for speech and feeding strategies.
Okay.
Then after that series is done, after those 4 weeks, I still have this, community where everyone can reach me if there's still questions, and, people want to still talk about that, they can contact me. But then the next one is going to be about IEPs and IEEs.
I bet you'll be full right
Yeah.
away for that one. I mean, that's one of the biggest topics that we end up talking about with any parent. With me being a parent of three, and I have three IEPs, ETR meetings all the time, and it's a constant, advocating. And fortunately, I live in a school district where they really do meet our kids where they are. They really do. And they actually even opened up a school within the public schools for kids that were in the gap. And two of my kids actually go there, which, it's very hard to speak IEP. So, and you have to realize that you are allowed to have a seat at the table. You are allowed to not sign the IEP if you don't agree. You are allowed to advocate and say what you really think that your child should need and go against what the education people at the table are saying. And it's kind of hard too, because when you've got like five or six or 10 people sitting around a table, and then there's you, the parent, and you didn't bring an advocate or anything, and they're all looking at you and they're just saying no. I mean, this is their diagnosis or whatever. This is what we're going to put on that line. We don't think it's autism. It should be whatever they think and things like that. You don't realize that you have the opportunity to say, no, I'm not signing this. I don't agree. Next time we will meet and I'm bringing an advocate, those types of things. But it is a whole different language in itself. And you have to be able to be very fluent in it to be successful for your kids and advocate for them. So I bet that you have a full house on that one.
Yeah. So I do expert witness cases for attorneys that are special ed law attorneys all over the
Mm,
country. So
okay.
and it was really, really fun. It's kind of my way of paying back. And all those moments I was trapped as an employee at the other side of the table,
Mm,
having to go along with the administration's ideals and not
mm.
over my own speech language pathology license and knowledge and experience of what would it take. And I had
Uh,
my hands tied behind my back. And there's some schools that are better than others, but I
oh,
get
yeah.
experience IEPs all over the country from New York, Arizona. I've moved a lot, California, and I get hired to go in as that expert witness, but it's intimidating. Like what you
Oh,
said, it's just you and all these, people at the table and they're speaking almost in another language, if you will, with all the acronyms and all that. So, and
yeah.
I tell people, it's like if you were going to go sit down and play a game for the very first time against people who have been playing it, and not only did they play it, they made some of the rules up. You're not going to win the first time you play that game and sit down. The odds are against you. My passion is to go educate people ahead of time so that you could be proactive, not reactive, and you could go
Hmm.
and have a better experience. And that what happens as a result of that is then you don't have time lost with your child's education.
I mean, that is so critical. And even those things like you were talking about them regressing, and I can't tell you how many times it just really kills me because I see regression in my kids in the summer, and they'll say, "Well, no, we don't need what's it called?
Ended school year.
E-
ESY.
yeah, ESY. We don't need ESY because we don't see regression." And I'm like, are we talking about the same child? So it really is about being prepared because they can talk so fast and like you said, all these acronyms and talk all this different language and then say, okay, all right, you agree? Okay, sign here, and then the meeting's over and you sign and it's like, wait a second, what did I just sign? So it's really awesome that you're doing that because I think that that is one of the biggest hurdles for parents, and they don't even really realize it a lot of times
Right.
that their child actually could receive so much more in the school district, and they just have no idea.
I have schools who actually refer their parents to me to work with me because they know that I'm fair and I'm realistic and I will advocate for what I feel really is the truth and not extra just because I know I'm not adversarial about it at all.
Right,
Just know the law behind special education. And as a therapist, I know what works. So when you put them together
right.
and you just ask people to keep accountability and do the right thing, it's amazing. But again, I love doing these master classes so that then it gives these parents who didn't get rubbed wrong yet an opportunity to
Mm,
not have that negative, hopeful experience that a lot of other families go through. And
mm.
or I get to go help a lot of families who have been on different social media platforms and private groups, and they're kind of rallying together and I have a great reputation in that field. So I get lots of referrals and do spend a lot of time doing that as well.
Yeah, I always say, aren't we supposed to be a team and all want the same thing for the child? We all want the child to be their absolute best self.
Yeah.
So, I mean that's where the bottom line is. And once in a while, when I've heard friends say this to me, well, the team is meeting and they're going to get back to me, and I say, wait a second, you're part of that team. Are
You
they
are.
meeting?
Good job.
Oh, yeah. You should be at that table because they can't meet without you.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a lot of times they make you feel like you're this outside invited guest. And it's like,
Yes.
well, it's my child that we're talking about. And two, that team that you just talked about, I beg to differ, but on that signature page, it lists me as a member of that team. So I'd like to be present and I'd like to be involved in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really great that you're doing that master class. And I'm sure that you have a lot more that you're going to be offering as well. Do you want to talk about any of those that you might have coming up?
Yeah, so I also try to do courses where it's that proactive piece. I like to do that as much as possible. And I do that for young or new parents, like
Mm.
maybe it's their first child. So then we have a series where I do touch on, what are the benefits of baby sign and why do you hear about it? And let me tell you about
Okay.
from me being a speech pathologist and a communication expert. And then we also fold in each class kind of has its different topic. So one is baby sign and getting those early communication things going. One is about sensory and how we have a lot of talk out on the street about like sensory processing and deregulation and people not liking or kids not liking things on their skin or labels and tags and all this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So, but if we found that if you can do a systematic desensitization early on, that you can actually help with some of that to decrease
Wow.
sensitivities. So we talk about that. Then 1 week is about feeding. So like there's lots of different ways to parent, and those choices are indeed the parents, but I just go share what we've seen
Mm.
work. And if you go this path, this is what we see. If you go that path, that's fine too. This is what we see. And I just share that so that parents can make their own educated decisions on what they want to do. And so we introduce the different talks of the different styles of feeding. So there's like baby-led weaning, there's a plethora of them out there. And so
Hmm.
we just talk about which ones that you like, and then what we see happen if you choose that one. And is there one better than the other? Not really. It's driven by the child and their individual needs. How do we avoid, having a picky eater? That's really essential to me because I would love to just avoid it at all costs. And so by having that proactive piece ahead of time, then these parents can make better choices and decisions, be educated, and then hopefully avoid picky eating. Um, and then the other part of that is just the speech and language overall part of just getting the kids to talk and communicate, just developmental milestones altogether that we go over so
Mm.
that everybody should be watching, whether it's, crossing midline, the benefits of tummy time. So all those things, even though I'm not an occupational therapist, working with them and having them on my team, working side by side with them for pretty much my 25 years being a therapist, it's been so helpful at knowing, what really can make a difference and be impactful. And we just want to spread that to parents before they have to be in that routine of, 12 to 18 months maybe of therapy twice a week. You're paying your copay. And that brings me to another thing that you mentioned at the beginning was that we do offer the intensive therapy sessions. And what that
Okay.
is for all the people who maybe don't have insurance or don't want to get caught up paying a really high deductible that they discover their plan has that they had no idea was attached to them. They can actually come in and do an intensive for 30 to 45 days with us. And if they're eligible,
Oh,
can't do it with all disabilities and problems, but there are many that we can, and it works so well that they just come in for 4 to 5 days, 4 weeks to maybe 6 weeks, and then therapy's over.
hmm. How many hours a day?
They just come in for sometimes 1 hour, sometimes it's 30 minutes, but the way it works and the reason why it works so well is because we're teaching the parent. And then that parent is empowered and they know how to do therapy 101, if you will, at home. And so that's what makes
Okay.
the difference.
Oh gosh, that is so continuity. What's that? Continuity of care.
Continuity
Um,
of care.
that is critical because
Mhm.
both sides have to be on the same page. If you're not working together, it doesn't work either.
Exactly. You're just spinning your wheels, right? And
Yes.
I don't want to take anyone's copay and just see that it's not working, you know what I mean? But when it's funny when the parents know that it's 30 days, they just put their all into it. And both moms and dads or just parents, caregivers, nannies, everybody who's
Mm-hmm.
helping with that child and that family,
Yeah.
they're all working really hard, but because of that, it goes so much faster. You don't need to do that traditional model that we all think that we need to do with our insurance. You just don't need to.
Mm.
We actually did evidence-based trials of it at my own practice. And so I made sure that I did it remotely so that I couldn't even, if I got, where I'm like, well, why don't you just come in and let me help you? I couldn't do that because they're so far away from me because I could get
Mm.
tempted to want to, just have them come in. But
Yeah.
we worked on it. And the nice thing is the feedback for the parents were like, it was the same amount of money. It's just that it was actually
Okay.
probably less because one family got to go submit their super
That
bill,
makes, yeah.
right? And then they also didn't have to go drive and be stuck in our California traffic. They didn't have the wear and tear. They didn't have that over their head cloud of like, oh my gosh, I got therapy this week and I got this on my plate, and parents run themselves into the ground pretty good. There's lots of things going on, sports and activities, and I get it. I'm a parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So what's really nice is when they can go concentrate and they just devote themselves for that 30 to 45 days. And it's essentially the same amount of money. So it's just that you got to pay up front for that versus the co-pays every, time that you come in for several weeks to over a year.
What you are talking about across the board are all things that are going to make them a better person for their entire life. Their
Right.
entire life. We're not talking about like small milestones here. I mean, we're talking about things that they critically need. I mean, this program is critical. How long can you continue to operate like this?
I'm under threat pretty quickly here to get fines funding because payroll is pretty steep, like I said. Our operation expenses every month are $200,000. So it's a lot of money. And then we have payroll every 2 weeks.
Oh
And
my
and then there's
gosh.
rent. And commercial rent isn't inexpensive either. So our rent is $45,000 collectively amongst all three locations.
Okay. I mean, this is a serious situation and you need help now. So what you mentioned before we went on air, a GoFundMe on your page. I mean, list all the ways that people can reach out to you. How can they get a hold of you? What is your website? And how can they help you financially?
The best way to get a hold of us is at achievementcenterfortherapy.com. And then we do have a Facebook page as well, which is another resource if they're interested in just learning. But to help us out, there is a GoFundMe on Achievement Center for Therapy's website. And then also we are working with Patreon to be the platform where we can start doing and hosting more of our master classes as well
Okay.
on my website there too. So I think starting with the GoFundMe would be huge. If there is somebody that's a philanthropist or that's somebody that is um, able to help, that would be huge too, because I'm looking for something, while the GoFundMe page says $100,000, that's because that's immediately needed by like next week, which sounds crazy, but I just keep praying and hoping that the other insurance companies and like pay enough. And I just keep sneaking by the skin of my teeth, to get the funds that we need. Or I've been blessed with friends or family who can, but this has been going on in too big a numbers for borrowing from friends or family. It's just exhausted. So, and then now at this point, when you didn't know, your credit's also diminishing because you just
Oh,
have so much piled on, right? So then
sure.
commercial banks are going to just take way too long. And then it's a uphill battle. I feel like I'm fighting right now. So really, really trying to find somebody that A would love to support us so that we can support our military families and these children that we serve.
Right. I mean, like you said earlier, it is critical for kids to continue the therapy or else they're going to start regressing very quickly. So, I mean, I love that you have this. This is such a great service and you are reaching so many kids. Can you tell us how many kids you are reaching?
Yeah, at each facility we have at least 50 families, so that would be over
Okay,
150. But it can ebb and flow. There's, times where it's more and sometimes when it's less. And right now we can't go gain more children with Tricare because we're not getting paid and I can't make,
sure.
payroll go up if we don't have the funds to pay them. So
So, yeah, you have to turn people down right now. You can't keep taking new people on.
right, right. And we have to service the ones that we do have because then it's we
Sure.
get charged with patient abandonment. So it's a
Yeah,
really, really
oh
bad.
my gosh.
I know that's mind blowing, right? Because when I
It,
learned about it, it was just like, wait a minute, I got to show up to work for free. Who else does this? You know what I mean? Like this is crazy to me.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what's really sad is that these, you put a difference, disability, however you want to say it, on a person, and you think, well, they're disposable, or it doesn't even matter. We don't have to have this care for them. You know what? I mean, that really bothers me because somebody that has autism and seeing so many people, some of the most intelligent people. We talked about Temple Grandin before we went on air. I mean, there are so many people that I'll tell you what, if we didn't have people with differences, we wouldn't have a lot of what we have today. And from Apple to, some of the biggest corporations, because we are really smart. We really do well. And sometimes we just need some help along the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. So having something like you, I wish that I would have had those helps. 50
Well,
years ago when I was a kid, they didn't have those things. And so there were people like Temple Grandin and people like, that we had these diagnoses hundreds of thousands of years ago, back in the Stone Age, when I was a kid. But now we have these opportunities. You have presented so many great things for kids that we didn't have even a couple decades ago. So it would be really a shame that we can't utilize these tools for these kids
right. Yeah.
because they will have so much more potential than even we did because of the things that you're offering them.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, just on average, if the services have to stop, it takes them like at least 6 months that they're on a waiting list in another facility. And that's like nationwide. There's a really long wait. But now if everyone else is closing their doors, then these kids are just going to be out of luck. You're like, how do we do that? And then,
And then what? Because
right,
the schools do their best to be able to do things
right.
within their buildings, but really they're limited. And your types of services are the ones that really do help the children.
And we work with the schools a lot of times, but it is really nice that we can collaborate and but it takes a comprehensive team to, do
Sure.
the schools don't do the medical side of things like what we do. They stick to the educational based things. So, yeah, there is a lot of kids who are going to be in a sad way, I guess. And not only them, it's their parents, the siblings, like it's a domino effect, if you will. So, but I'm hopeful between, offering some of these master classes and getting back to doing some of those things to just reach out to more people that with high volume, that hopefully that can be a supplemental income as well for us. So I'm trying. So I'm looking forward to trying to put together some of those classes so that then I'm helping people, but in essence, they're going to be helping our military.
They give their life, they give their everything, and
I know.
then they're not often taken care of.
Yeah, this is really bad. Like there's people who aren't getting surgeries that need them. That's how bad this is because the doctors, you got to know it's like orthopedic surgeons, oncology surgeons, oncologists, pediatricians. It's everybody in the military is not getting paid.
I didn't realize that. Nobody is getting paid for any of their
Mm.
surgeries or anything that they need right now.
No providers in our country that serve and are a medical provider of any sort that are serving the military families are getting paid since January 1st, and we had no knowledge of it. We had no warning, no nothing. So I have a pretty big ship that I keep sail, and it's just been devastating. So you go the first month and you think like, okay, well, maybe they're just waiting 30 days, and then you can't get an answer from anybody. And then you wait and you're like, oh my gosh, it's halfway through February. Now what? You know what I mean? And we're like, and then you can't go quick enough to go borrow those kinds of funds without that type of planning. There's just, it's not heard of. You know what I mean? It takes 60 days, sometimes 90 days to get that kind of money that you would need from a bank if you have a good working relationship with them. If you have your own private practice of any sort, you are not getting paid right now by Tricare.
And that would cover doctors and surgeons.
And it would cover your doctors and surgeons no matter what. So if you needed an emergency like surgery, okay, we got a critical situation here. And I just thought like, oh my gosh, like is there some type of something that's going to happen like a PPP emergency thing for all of us because this is an emergency.
It
And
really isn't. I didn't realize this. I didn't know this. And I don't and I'm a news junkie. So I really haven't heard this. I'm just throwing this out there. I just had a thought because of what you do. What about you offered you know how they do telehealth and they offer all the how if you offered from all walks of life around the country and you could service them through video
Mhm.
and virtually help people for a fee.
Yeah, that's what that advanced intensive therapy actually is. So that one is done mostly remote or in a concierge format. That
Okay.
then so we do a lot of that work remotely. And how that came to be too was my testing it out. If I'm not there physically directly with them, is it still effective? And the answer is yes, because we tested it out. But when I've been testifying as an expert witness, I got to go to different places and I'm like, I can't help you if I don't have a license in this state. It's just how it works. I have to, if I'm going to give
Oh,
therapy, which I have a license in so many states and it's fine. We're happy to do it as long as we know that we can go help a family, then that's absolutely not a problem whatsoever. So during COVID, we've done teletherapy so successfully, it's been great.
okay. So do you have a list of the states on your website of they can contact you and do this virtually?
You know what? And I am happy to go get the license for whichever state the person is in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So it would make it worth it, just to be able to help them. And then how it usually works is in my industry, it's just word of mouth, and more people will say, like, this is how we got our help. And that's basically how it covers the expense of obtaining that license because there is a cost for it.
Right. So it would be out of pocket at this
Right.
point
Right.
because unless you start being able to take Medicaid or start being able to take other
Mhm.
insurances,
Yeah.
but it would be an affordable out of pocket possibly.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing too is trying to do things by masses. I feel like a lot of times when the parents can go be educated at knowing how to do things, that they can go try it out in 1 or 2 days, and then we come back live as a group, and then everybody kind of gets to share like, oh, that was successful for me. Oh, this was still a challenge. But then it's just really nice for all the families to have some camaraderie to know that they're not in it alone and they can learn from one another. So that's kind of what I'm trying to form too, so that
Okay.
then we can help them. But yeah, individually too, it's just that me as one person or even with my team, I just don't want to get in a position where, we have the too many families that we can't go give in the schedule of 40 hours to go help that many people. We would be limited. So that's where these kind of group things came to be so that we can help more people in a bigger volume. But there are cases where people just need that one-on-one time with me too, and that's okay, and we can make that happen.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This is big. I think that it's a lot bigger story than even just you, and what's really sad is that this is a population that needs served because they have so much to offer to this world. and they need to reach their full potential. And I see three kids of my own every single day that I'm so thankful for the services that they have received. And
Mhm.
they would not be who they are if it wasn't for, yeah, the all of the doctors that we have, and the therapies and the early therapies that we had, and yeah, the schools. So I really appreciate everything that you do, and if there's anything else that we could do to help you, please let me know.
I think the outreach, this has been great. Thank you so much for letting me come on and tell my story. And, hopefully we can um, touch somebody that can be able to help us. That would be lovely.
How about a phone number and any other way that they can call you directly?
Yep. The best way to get a hold of us is or me, is the 805 383 1497. That's
Okay.
that's the number to our headquarters. And then that will get to me.
And the website again was,
achievementcenterfortherapy.com.
okay, great. Do you have an email that they can
Yep.
contact you?
Would just be my first name. That's a great way to get a hold of me is Shawn, SHAWN, at achievementcenterfortherapy.com. It's a long one, but hopefully you only have to do it once.
All right. Well,
So,
thank you so much for
thanks, Anne.
for for coming on. We really appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you do, and I pray that you receive the helps that you need to be able to stay open and continue to service these children with differences that are going to make huge differences in the world at some point. But they just need to be served, and you know, you just want to keep your doors open.
Praying.
So,
Yep. Thank you so much.
all right. Well, thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you for listening or watching, and we will see you next time.